Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So let's begin our session with a wonderful quote. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Good evening everyone. I, Lakshmi, being your host for today's international webinar on the topic plant-based nutrition, extends my warm greeting and a very good evening to all of you present here. Plant-based nutrition emphasizes consuming whole, minimally processed plant food such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. This dietary approach is rich in essential nutrients, fiber, and antioxidants, promoting overall health and reducing the risk of chronic diseases. By prioritizing plant foods, individually can enjoy a diverse and flavorful diet while supporting environmental sustainability and ethical consideration. Incorporating plant-based meals into one's routine can lead to numerous health benefits and contribute to a more balanced and sustainable food system. Talking about SEMS Welfare Foundation, we are a Section 8 not-for-profit company registered under the Companies Act 2013 with various recognition from Niti Aayog, MSME, MPCon, DDU, GKY and more. Recognized as a startup by DIPP MCI and awarded Best Service Award for National Contribution. SEMS Group, with an active network of 5,000 plus professionals, published books and an international journal, organized education and health camp for underprivileged children, promoted digital and financial literacy, and contributed to our society. Our initiative, Digi Saksham, has developed content for 300 plus courses in IT, BFSI, retail, entrepreneurship, impacting diverse age group. We have executed a skilling project for 600 inmates, signed MOUs for training, collaborated with various organizations, and conducted international conferences. FEM leads another SEMS initiative empowers women through workshop and newsletter, conducting awareness programs in digital literacy, marketing, and career development across different countries. We have impacted over 1,000 women across states and recently celebrated a milestone of 100 women associated with the program. On behalf of whole SEMS family, I welcome you all for today's international webinar on plant-based nutrition. And to add to our guest of honor, today's speaker is Niranjana Iyer. It is a great honor to have you with us, ma'am. We are grateful for your presence here with us today. Niranjana is a senior SEO copywriter and Google Ads expert. She is a well versed with A to Z of digital marketing. She has successfully mastered over 24 professional courses on SEOs, persuasive copywriting, writing with flair and style, corresponding writing, and Google Ads. Niranjana has written several articles in various platforms, which covers innumerable genres. She has learned from Gosia George, an SEO and digital marketing expert. She speaks and writes with clear syntax, grammar, style, theme, and poise. She writes for news articles as well. Being a book author, established writer, and speaker, Niranjana is passionate about creating a powerful impact through well researched writing and content. Having made significant changes to her health, she decided to publish her first book, Plant Based Recipes and Mindful Approach to Life. Her hobbies are weightlifting, functional training, and painting. Now, over to you, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, SEMS Foundation, for such a lovely and inviting, warm, welcoming invite. That is very, very kind of you. Thank you very much for the invite. And I'm so thankful for all of you guys who are here today in this seminar. And I thank each and every one of you for taking the time off your busy schedules or during the festivities of Ugadi to come and attend this session. So I extend my warm welcome to each and every one of you. Now, this particular topic of plant-based nutrition or mindfulness or eating mindfully or eating clean is something which I carry very deep to my heart, not just because my first book was done by this, but I believe that this can really do a powerful thing for a lot of people who struggle with any kind of disorder or disease. I think we all know a few basic points of what it is to be healthy. It could be drinking a lot of water. It could be eating fruits, vegetables, avoiding deep fried food, avoiding something which is from fast food. We know the basics. But a lot of us question and a lot of us try to understand as what is wrong with eating dairy products or what is wrong with eating non-veg? How does that go from a health standpoint? So today I will be talking about plant-based nutrition. I will not be using the word vegan here because I am not going to be coming from an ethical standpoint. I will be not speaking about animal cruelty because that's a very different topic altogether. I will be speaking about plant-based nutrition from a health standpoint and what it can do to a person's body and mind. A little bit of a personal journey of myself is I was not always a plant-based eater. I was someone who used to eat a lot of dairy and have a lot of eggs. But that was not good for me. I encountered a lot of obstacles, very chronic health issues, but with hard work and resilience, eliminating eggs and dairy from my diet, went on a strict plant-based diet, and I am completely out of all of those issues. Now, a lot of people struggle with very different kinds of health issues. I will be talking about diabetes, heart attacks, high cholesterol, obesity, women's menstrual issues, PCOS, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer, and breast cancer. Now, the thing is, there are various different kinds of illnesses and diseases. And I would just, from a nutritionist standpoint, get into the whole medical and nutrition standpoint of food and nutrition. Now, when we classify the aspect of dairy and meat, there are two classifications. One is inflammatory foods and anti-inflammatory foods. Now, under inflammatory foods, these foods cause inflammation. And when I refer to inflammation, I don't refer inflammation on top of the skin, but within the body. This could be in terms of a bruise, it could be inflammation in the gut lining. This can cause any kind of big disturbance into the normal human body processes. And that is what inflammation can do. It can also lead to disorders and diseases. So under inflammatory foods comes dairy and comes meat because they are inflammatory in nature. People who consume a lot of dairy and a lot of meat, more than they consume the normal fruits and vegetables, will go through some sorts of issue, whether it's obesity or hypertension or diabetes. So that comes under inflammatory. Your anti-inflammatory are the foods that do not cause inflammation, hence it's called anti-inflammatory. This is your wide variety of your plants, your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes, your seeds, your pulses, your dals, your soy products like your tofu, tempeh, your nuts, your seeds, everything which comes from Mother Earth comes from plants. This comes under anti-inflammatory foods. The other thing about dairy products is dairy is very high in saturated fats. Now, I'm sure we've heard of things as fats. Now, some fats are good for you and some fats are not good for you. If I classify fats, I can classify fats into three kinds of fats. That is trans fats, saturated fats, and unsaturated fats. Now, under trans fats, these fats are very bad and they should be avoided as much as possible. This refers to your junk food, your processed meat, deep fried food, and anything which is highly processed. When it comes to saturated fat, that refers to maida. We've all heard from some place or some source that maida is really not good for us. Dairy and your animal produce, as in your meat. That comes under saturated fats. Saturated fats, they say, is to be had at minimum, best to avoid. But in our day and age and generation, some of us consume it, whether we know it or not, whether we go to a restaurant or we go out, we buy a chocolate, we go out for ice cream, we have it here and there. But it's best to be avoided to the minimum if you want to have optimal health. Then the last, but of course not the least, is your unsaturated fat. Now, unsaturated fats are your healthy fats. These come from avocados, they come from nuts, they come from seeds. These are all your healthy fats, which are good to consume. Not in abundance, can be consumed in moderation, but they are good for you. They are healthy for you. So those are the unsaturated fats. Now, coming into one of the first topics I will come into is type 2 diabetes. Now, a lot of us have, of course, each and every one of us has heard of the term diabetes, and Unfortunately, India is one of the leading countries with diabetes. But what a lot of us don't know about diabetes is we think it's because of overconsumption of sugar, overconsumption of alcohol, and sedentary lifestyles only. But what is actually surprising is diabetes reversal can easily happen by going through a plant based diet. And how is this? Because when you consume dairy, there is a high level of insulin resistance inside the body. And the main reason for diabetes is insulin resistance. When you remove dairy out of your system, you have improved insulin sensitivity. So when you have improved insulin sensitivity, your body can take an insulin, and that's how it's more appropriate to have a plant-based diet and avoid dairy, because dairy is a major trigger. Second is, like I mentioned previously, is dairy is high in saturated fats. Fats of in a saturated nature are really not good for you, and they lead to obesity, and they also allow sugar and the saturated fat into the bloodstream, which really isn't very healthy to consume. Then we come into issues like heart attacks. Now, in various different kinds of studies, especially there was a very famous study called the China study. I'm sure some of you guys who are into the health and nutrition field have heard about the China study. Now, the China study was done in 2004, done by Thomas Collin. And a very famous study is that he was trying to understand the various different kinds of cancers in China, cancer as a disease. And what was the most amazing finding of this is, of all of the cancers, the majority, about 98% of cancers, were because of lifestyle and diet. And these cancers could be cured by just avoiding meat and dairy from the body. So, what's a very profound study is that there are a lot of diseases and there are a lot of disorders which are not mostly genetic, but they are because of a pattern of having a certain kind of lifestyle, and being prone to eating of a certain way. The food that you eat has a very profound effect of how your health is going to be. Of course, there are factors like exercise, which is extremely important, getting some movement, going for walks, lifting weights, exercising, and of course, some form of physical exercise is needed. But what you consume is incredibly important. It doesn't necessarily just go to deep fried food or junk food, but also goes into whether you're having an animal-based product food or a plant-based product, which is very important to understand. Now, throwing light into something which I am very passionate to talk about is the issues of women developing PCOS, which is the polycystic ovarian syndrome, or hormonal imbalances at a very young age, very early, from the early 20s to the early 30s. And this is happening a lot in our generations. If you looked at our grandparents' generations, they did not go through these kind of issues so early on. And what we're noticing in our generation, we're noticing these issues are becoming very common. Now, the main reason for hormonal imbalances or menstrual distress or menstrual issues, very surprisingly, even to my notice, because I experienced this personally, is when you're consuming a lot of eggs and dairy. So, going into the aspects of the menstrual disorders and into things like that, what is the connection between having dairy and eggs to menstrual issues? Very surprisingly, is the thing about cows when they secrete milk. There is a connection between a woman, a human being, and a cow, as we both are mammals. And a woman gives out breast milk during pregnancy, and so does a cow. So, when this happens, when a woman gives out breast milk, of course, there are two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Now, the cow secretes hormones similar to estrogen and progesterone, but obviously it is very different for a human body to consume. So, when a pregnant cow lactates and gives out milk, not only are we drinking the milk of the hormonal cow, we're having injected steroid hormones, because for cows to produce the amount of milk in the population of India, has to be some kind of steroid hormone injections that we are getting to in order to get this much of milk from a cow. Because ideally, the cow is supposed to give out milk for the calf, but the cow is doing a bigger job in secreting a lot of milk for the human population. This is not, so what we're drinking is not just the cow's hormones, but the steroid hormones that are injected from a cow to produce this kind of milk. And this is very, very harmful for a woman's cellular level, for a woman's uterus, for its estrogen, for its hormonal levels. And that's why women go through a menstrual distress, PCOS, dysmenorrhea, and various different kinds of menstrual issues and things like that. So it's very important to understand is if a woman is not exercising or there's no movement, or if there is a lot of consumption of your fatty cheeses, your butter, your ghee, you're more likely going to develop pre-diabetic syndromes and PCOS or menstrual syndrome. So it's very important to cut off eggs and dairy, as majority of women are sensitive to it. And the rate to getting prone to breast and ovarian cancer is very high in such cases because of the overconsumption of dairy and eggs. Prostate cancer for men is also possible because of development of endothelial cells. This is a difficult thing because dairy disrupts the process. And when you consume dairy and eggs, you're more common to have prostate cancer. So this was in cancer, it's referred to growth of abnormal cells, and various different kinds of extreme hormonal fluctuations is also relating to cancer. And this can be because of consuming animal hormones and steroid hormones. So we don't ask to drink the steroid hormones, but they are unfortunately injected into these animals for us to get what they're eating. And that really messes with our system, especially in today's age and generation with the mass industries and production of things like that. So you see that this adulterated components that come within, because already animal produce and your meat produce is not the healthiest, but they're also adulterated. There are chemicals, there are steroid hormones and injections. And that's why I would advise a lot of women to not consume these products, especially dairy and eggs. Now I will be coming into the questions. So the first question is, can we switch to alternative options for dairy? Yes, absolutely. There are plenty of dairy alternatives. If I could give an example for anything, I can, because for curd, there are various different kinds. There's cashew curd, there's peanut curd. I was just having a lot of peanut curd today morning. For milk, there's soy milk, almond milk, cashew milk, and things like that. It varies, just like how we have different prices for meat and different prices for dairy. In plant-based food, there are different prices. So it's not necessarily to be expensive. If I were to make 1 liter of cashew milk, I would just have 5 or 6 cashews in my hand, blended in water till I reach a very milky consistency, and I will have my cashew milk. It's very easy to make almond milk, cashew milk, peanut curd, easy replaceables. I mean, if you even go to your local South Indian darshanis, when you go eat your idli, dosa, and vada, all of that is a plant-based. There's no dairy products used. And it's also very inexpensive. Instead of using ghee, you can use oil. There are various different kinds of plant-based cheeses. If you just have cashews and nutritional yeast together, you can make a nice plant-based Parmesan. There are so many different kinds of alternatives. I've been making a lot of plant-based creamy cheeses at home with just tofu, cashews, garlic, and lemon juice. And that's coming into a very interesting and really nice taste to have. And what I've noticed is when you're consuming these plant-based alternatives, they're very low in your calories and they're very high in your nutrition. So your body feels very light, ease, and it's more energetic because dairy is high in saturated fat. So when I went from having dairy curd to peanut curd, I saw a huge difference that I didn't taste the fat. I didn't taste how fattening it was. It just tasted very smooth and right to the taste. So there are so many different kinds of plant-based alternatives. I'm a big fan of mock meat. That is an acquired taste, apparently. Not everybody is a fan of something which is not meat at all, but is made to taste and look like meat. This is something which can be made up of soy, vegetable produce, and various different kinds of healthy vegetarian options. I know mock meats which are made up of brown rice and green peas. So there are various different kinds of dairy alternatives into dairy alternatives. If you would want to know the alternatives, you just have to just type in vegan curd or vegan ghee or vegan cheese or vegan milk, or just type in mock meat. You'll get various different kinds of options in the market, and they're very tasty and they're extremely healthy. The next question is, what is the difference between proteins, vitamins, and nutrients? That's a great question. So the thing is, there's various different kinds of nutritional components within each and every food produce that you have. When we refer to vitamins, each and every vitamin property has a really specific kind of benefit to the system. For example, vitamin D is really good for a particular thing of strengthening. Vitamin C has a different property. Vitamin B12 is a very important for growth and cellular development. So various different kinds of vitamins are there. And when we talk about the plant-based nutrition, the immense variety of your plants, your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes, your pulses, this itself can encompass all your nutritional requirements. It does cater to your proteins, it does cater to your vitamins, it does cater to your nutrition. However, B12 is something which we cannot independently completely rely on, to be very honest. So I would suggest people to go on B12 supplements, either injections or supplements, which are not that expensive and they can be consumed on a regular basis, because generally people do have deficiencies in B6 and B12. But to resolve the statement that you can get all your nutritional requirements from a plant-based diet, just B12 will be something which you will have to get externally. Now, to the question is how to know my diabetic symptoms. Well, it's important to take a blood test to be accurately sure. Of course, diabetic symptoms can range from feeling dizzy, feeling tired, not able to do your regular functioning. A weight gain is a big symptom for diabetes. But then again, these symptoms can be interchangeable for something else. So it's always recommended to take a blood test or take a diabetes test to take this. But I will say the best diabetes reversal is to avoid having dairy, eggs, and meat from your diet. Of course, avoiding sugar is one. But since dairy has high saturated fats and sugar, it's very good and highly recommended to reverse diabetes completely. Plant-based food options for vitamin D. Well, they're all in your green leafy vegetables. If I talk about your green peppers, your lettuce, your cucumbers, your spinach, your kale, and your citrus like your oranges, your lemons. The more that is what you can focus on for your vitamin D. But I would say in terms of having a balanced diet is you focus on adding a lot of color into your plate, and that's what's going to give you the vibrancy of your vitamins. But to have a successful balanced diet, there are three components. This would be fiber, protein, and carbs. So carbs refers to your farinaceous products, all your pastas, your dals, your pulses, your legumes. All of this is going to be in your carbohydrates, like your bread, your chapati, your roti, your rice. This is your carbs. You will have at least 40% of this in your plate. The other two would be 50% of protein and 40% of your fiber. Protein, abundance of protein in a plant-based diet. It can be coming to your beans, your chickpeas, your legumes, your pulses. You can have your soy, your tempeh, your mushrooms, your green peas. There's so much of plant-based protein sources. Then we talk about your fiber. Fiber is everything to do with your plant, your fruits, your vegetables, covers into this. So when you talk about these three important aspects, have it as a balance. We don't just only eat rice to get our nutrition, or we only have a lot of broccoli to get our nutrition, or we only eat tofu for our nutrition. We need to have a balance of our protein, fiber, and carbohydrates. So I had recently published a book last year on plant-based recipes and mindful approach to life. And this book also talks about how do you balance your food in a plate, whether it's your simple dal roti sabzi, it's your idli sambar, how do you balance it? How do I make sure it's a balanced meal with all my nutrition that I can follow for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And that's what's covered in the book. So that's what the questions that I've answered. So, in terms of a plant-based diet, it is the most recommended diet in all medical studies today because it prevents all different kinds of diseases and issues that relate to the gut or that relate to the human body and general. 70% of our immunity is in our gut. So what we eat has a very big impact. I'm stressing on this because our immunity lies in the gut. Our gut microbiome is just depends upon how we eat and how we take care of ourselves. Our energy levels depend upon how we eat and how we take care of ourselves. So that ultimately depends upon if we're getting the right amount of quality fruits and vegetables, our legumes, our pulses, our dals, our things like that. Very interestingly, I will bring up the former president of America, Bill Clinton, and there was a study shown on him. So he was going through different difficult times of heart issues and heart complications, and people said he wasn't going to make it. This was, I think, maybe during his presidency time. And what a very famous nutritionist said is advised him is just stop having your fish, stop having your meat and dairy, and go on a plant-based diet. Just by doing this in a span of 2 weeks, the size of his arteries have completely changed. So you can notice and you can see that even the famous celebrities and people who are in renowned posts, presidential posts, and things like that, it's their medical studies are transparent, and it's so evident that just by them dropping your eggs and dairy, it is very wonderful for a person's growth, and it really affects from the arteries to the uterus, to your gut, to your overall well-being. A plant-based diet can really be the most sustainable diet that there is. Seed cycling is effective for PCOS. I'm sorry, I don't really quite understand the question. Zainab, if you could just elaborate on this. Okay, she says she has mic issues. Okay, so I'm not really sure by what you've mentioned as seed cycling is effective for PCOS, but what I would recommend for PCOS, to my knowledge, is one, getting adequate exercise. I'm like the biggest advocate towards weightlifting because that has made a huge impact for my menstrual disorder. I've completely overcome it. But to overcome it, it was not easy. It did not happen in a month or 2 months. It took a lot of time. But the most important thing was exercising, weightlifting, and getting really good movement into the body. Okay, that's really important. And what's really important is avoiding your eggs and dairy. Like I mentioned earlier, PCOS can definitely get away within a month or two. Highly advisable not to take any kinds of pills or hormonal pills, because when you're already injected with these steroid hormones and these different kinds of hormones from different kinds of milk products and from the eggs and from the poultry products, your body already has all those hormones. So take additional hormonal pills, which the gynecologists give you, will make your condition worse or will actually numb your system. So to cleanse your system, it's very important is to get rid of all the dairy that your body has been conditioned to consume. And that has, I think, been the most successful thing for me. And I think, and I can highly vouch it will be very successful to others. Okay, the question is, what would be a great idea to bring about basic change in diet considering the plan? I think the most important thing is to be mindful of what you consume. A little changes go a long way. Even in your tea and coffee, which we're so conditioned to have, if we can skip that and go for a black coffee or go for a green tea or just drink water or go for a nice iced tea, I think these things will go a long way if you start making small changes. Nothing happens overnight, and change will not happen in the next dinner. It takes gradual changes, but how I started it was keeping a notebook and writing down everything that I ate during the day. So I am more mindful about what I'm eating. And like I said, having three components of your protein, fiber, and your carbohydrates, 50% of protein, 40% of fiber, and 40% of carbohydrates in your diet breakfast, lunch, and dinner will go a very long way. It'll keep you full and it will not get you lethargic, and it will give you sustained energy without any energy spikes or insulin spikes. So, very importantly, is to be very mindful about what you're consuming and also try to reduce dairy and sugar at the most. If you are already a vegetarian, then focus on reducing dairy and sugar. If you are a non-vegetarian trying to go into vegan, I would say take it step by step. Try just avoiding having meat and seeing if you can sustain eating a vegetarian diet and then remove dairy. Because going all the way all at once can be a little overwhelming for some people and might be a little mentally difficult, but it's all about the mental mindset. If you think you can, then you definitely will. Make sure you hydrate plenty, have 3 liters of water, and make sure that you keep moving throughout the day. Even it's not just about exercising that 1 hour that you get in the day, but whenever you get a chance, even if at office, whenever you can, go for a walk or just walk around and not be sitting in one place for a long time, because our bodies are designed to move. It's not just about eating healthy, but it's also giving our bodies the kind of movement that it kind of deserves. So being mindful is a great way to go forward with a plant-based diet, and you will experientially feel it yourself. For me, when I was asked to go to a plant-based diet, my nutritionist told me, try it for 4 or 5 days and see how you feel. And for me, I was somebody who had chronic acidity. And I used to think that this is something which I was born with and I will have chronic acidity. I will never get rid of it. But the moment I stopped having dairy products from my diet, I noticed there was no acidity within 3 days of following a dairy free diet. And I was away from my acidity, my acid reflux, and any of my gut issues were completely gone. Today, I can confidently say that I don't have any acidity or acid reflux, but I had it for so many years. So to have it for so many years and just for the first 3 days of your life, not eat it, it plays a great role into the system. So I would recommend that you try it out yourself and you will notice the changes immediately. The next question is how many calories per day? Yes, it does get very confusing when we use the word calories because that's when the anxiety comes in and we're like, okay, I just had my lunch. How many calories was that? I just went out for a meal with my colleagues. How many calories was that? I went out for a birthday party. I ate a cake. How many calories? The word calories itself and things like that, that gives you a lot of anxiety. One thing you need to understand is a plant-based diet itself is very low in calories and high in nutrition. Every single thing you eat has calories. Even water has calories. So to understand this, very simply put, is avoid your processed foods, avoid having sugar, and avoid having dairy. Meat goes on its way of not having it. But if you focus on these things of no sugar, no dairy, limit your oil, or if you can reduce oil completely, that will be even great. But reduce your processed food, that itself will bring about a great shape because these 4 components I've mentioned are high in calories. When you go into a plant-based diet, they're low calories itself, but you need to have a variety. If I say vegetables, it's not just your carrots. You need to have the variety of vegetables. If I say fruits, it's not just mangoes, it's your variety of this. So make sure you incorporate that variety in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And don't worry about the calorie count and things like that. Just make sure you don't have your sugar and you don't have your dairy, and you incorporate a variety of your beans, your pulses, your legumes, your dals, your vegetables, and your fruits. And of course, having seeds as well is very healthy. Going to raw vegetables is very good. See, the thing is, when you are cooking vegetables and stuff, a lot of its nutritive value goes away. When I boil broccoli, a lot of the nutrition from the broccoli goes into the water if I boil any vegetables for that matter. But of course, we can't eat all our vegetables raw. So to some extent, we can have some vegetables which are raw, but I think it's advisable to just have some raw and steamed vegetables which are minimally processed, minimally cooked. That's really important. But going for raw vegetables is the best way. So there is the concept called as whole food plant-based. This means having things which are minimally processed, which are not processed at all. This is also is saying not having any oils at all. That's like the healthiest form of diet there is. where you're saying that you're having nothing that's processed, which means no white rice, and having only your millets and brown rice and not consuming even a teaspoon of oil. Now, that is the healthiest diet there is because nothing of that is processed. And a plant based diet, it also includes oils, it includes white rice and things like that. Because right now I'm just going into the introductory form of plant based diet. Chances of inflammation in a plant based diet, of course, never overdo anything. You don't want to have too much of something. If I was only eating broccoli, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it will not be good for my stomach. I'll get a lot of gas. If I was eating only potatoes, I will get a lot of gas. So never overdo anything. But in a plant-based diet, you can't go wrong when you balance it, because when you balance it, you will have reduced inflammation and you'll have more of a holistic approach to it, because you'll notice that your body itself will heal if you are someone who's not used to having a plant-based diet. So I highly recommend raw vegetables, having smoothies, having plant-based milks. Again, it's very easy to make them, and just being very experimental. And like I said, it's okay to slip up. Maybe you'll feel like eating something of your favorite non-veg, or you'll feel like eating some dairy. One or two slip-ups is okay, because you cannot tell your mind that it's a punishment. You have to start liking what you're doing. You have to start enjoying what you're eating. So it's a step-by-step process. You have to give your mind some time to adjust. But once you are fully adjusted, for me, there was no turning back. I didn't have to go back. I was forever in the plant-based world. And I think for you guys as well, if you really enjoy it, then there's no turning back for you. Are there any chances of sugar hikes in eating only mixed fruit meal in the night? Not necessarily if you're having fruits. So there's a big misconception towards having fruits and sugar. Natural sugar in the fruit will not cause any sugar spikes, but if you consume dairy products, they will. So there's a big misconception about whether there is sugar in the fruit. There is sugar in the fruit, but it's not going to cause a major sugar spike or a sugar increase. The sugars found in fruits are absolutely fine to have, provided that you don't have an additional movement of other processed sugars or other processed dairy products as well. So I believe I've answered all your questions. And if there's, okay, so if there is, see, heart issues are a very complicated phenomenon. Now, the connection between this topic and heart issues is very such that is that dairy products and meat products, they are high in saturated fat. This clogs up the arteries of the heart. And they are also high in bad cholesterol, and they clog up the arteries. Now, for a heart person, for in terms of diet and lifestyle, I would say very important to get physical exercise. Do not have a sedentary lifestyle of just sitting. If you're somebody whose job is to sit and be in front of a laptop, make sure you get some kind of movement throughout the day, or you exercise throughout the day. And ensure that you have a lot of fruits, vegetables, and a variety of a plant-based diet alone. And please reduce having your sugary foods and things which have dairy in it. If you're someone who doesn't consume any alcohol, who doesn't smoke, who doesn't eat much of sweets, then I would say avoid dairy. Avoiding dairy is very important for people who have heart issues, because that can actually really affect the heart in a bad way. What's very good for the heart is having things like mushrooms, having dark leafy vegetables, greens, and having more of a plant-based diet. But avoiding meat, I think that meat is the biggest killer for a heart. So please avoid meat at all costs.
If there any charts or pictorial representation for balanced diet, then please share it.
Okay, so hi, Kulkarni. So unfortunately, I don't have any pictorial representations, but I have done a book which has the pictorial representation of what needs to be eaten. That is mentioned in my book. I will just post the link of the book below so that you can avail it. But I will also repeat that when I refer to a balanced diet, it is basically, if I would look at this as a pie chart, I would say 40% of their diet should have your farinaceous products. When I say that, I mean it's your chapati, it's your rice, it's your dosa, anything which is your farinaceous products. Your carbohydrates is your 40%, 50% is your protein. That is your pulses, your legumes, your dals, your soy, your tofu, all your proteins come under 40% of this. Sorry, 50% of protein and 40% of your fruits and vegetables into this. So this is very, very important to have in a diet. Please do get the book. What is in the book? It is 11 plant-based recipes which are very cost effective. It is very easy to make at your house. It's not expensive and it's very healthy. It's nutrient dense, which means it's very rich in your nutrients. 11 recipes of that plus a comprehensive guide which talks about how to eat right, how to have your legumes, how to have your fruits, how to have your vegetables, and what is the balance you put on your plate, like I just mentioned, and how does that go with weightlifting. A bit of my personal journey is there was a time in the year 2022 where I did not get enough exercise and I was eating a lot of eggs and dairy, and I ended up going into the pre-diabetic range, and I had this condition called dysmenorrhea, which means every time I would get my menstrual cycle, I would have to be hospitalized and get injections. I had to be carried to the hospital. So these conditions were something I never understood, and I felt like someone who doesn't drink, who doesn't smoke. Why are these things happening? But then I got to know going to the right nutritionist was that one, I wasn't getting the right exercise, and two was because I was having a lot of eggs and dairy. And that was a big eye-opening thing. I ended up losing 16 kgs in 14 weeks after I stopped having eggs and dairy, provided I was exercising as well like this. So for people like I see a question saying about weight problem, best thing to do is stop having dairy and eggs. A lot of people have lost a lot of weight just by stop having your dairy and eggs. And of course, exercise, I don't have to sell it to you. Everybody knows exercise is great, but it's not exercise alone. I would honestly say stop eating meat, stop having dairy and eggs. You will see that the saturated fat levels of your body reduce. Like I spoke about saturated fats, and you become a lot more fit, and you reduce the fat in your body. Okay, so Zainab has asked a question. So can we stop eating eggs or can we consume it in balance? What are your views? So a lot of people consume eggs, majority because there is B12 and there's protein. I would suggest that if you're looking at it from a nutritional standpoint, I would say women to avoid eating eggs at all cost because eggs cause a lot of harm for a woman's cycles. But for men, you can consume eggs from a nutritional standpoint, but you can get your sources of protein from plant-based nutrition. But since plant-based foods have low B12, I guess men can consume eggs for the B12, but it's very harmful for women to be eating eggs. I also want each and every one of you to go on YouTube and read up or listen a lot about plant-based nutrition or plant-based diets. There are a lot of TED Talks about people speaking about their conditions and speaking about how it is. Another book which I would strongly recommend is Fiber Fueled. I'll just show the book. So this book is one of my favorite books. It's by Dr. Will Bulbich. He's a gastroenterologist, and he started off his life on a very strong American diet, eating a lot of eggs, eating a lot of meat, and how he changed and how he feels like this can revolutionize and change the way cancer is even growing in our world. It's a very, very good book. I highly recommend Fiber Fueled. But there are so many other amazing books also which are there. You can either go on Spotify, you can either go on YouTube, and you can see a lot of these things. Yes, Saurabh, your question is providing enough protein and nutrients. Yes, a plant-based diet alone provides all your nutritional requirements and your protein requirements. The only thing is B12 is something which is insufficient. So with B12, we take B12 supplementations. Injections can be had, but instead of injections, you can just have the B12 supplements, which I take. You can just rely on that. But other than B12, a plant-based diet can have all your nutrition and vitamins. And it is very good in preventing and eliminating all different kinds of diseases, right from diseases like diabetes to things like cancer.
Like it's very thanks for organizing this event.
So that
EMS Foundation and Niranjan. It's a very informative session. Like with whatever the information you have shared to us, like maybe we should start as you said. Like we start seeing the videos and collect information and reading your book. So basically, the plant-based diet what and all like which will be handy for us, like what we can start eating on a daily basis, so on a regular basis, instead of trying and jumping into it directly. So
Correct.
bring in a small change. So I mean, like it's very tough to overnight drift to the diet and all that. So what is like handy for us, what we can go pick up and start eating it, so and see the change in our daily diet. So that's what I think we have to do, is what I understood with this particular session.
Yes, yes. So it's always the small changes make the bigger impacts and not the bigger changes. So start small, but just know to be mindful when we're consuming food, because food isn't connected to mood. Sometimes we'll have the mood to eat healthy, sometimes we'll not have the mood. So that's when we need to be mindful and not always listen to our mind, but always listen to the gut and have a healthy gut.
Yeah, and like final fun small closing question, like how timely this should be maintained. See, now people who are traveling and people who be at different places at different times, because the time is a factor there. Instead of having some kind of plant-based or nutrition food, time will affect the intake of the food. So how can that be adjusted?
So it's important, if you're traveling and if you're packing meals, always plan your meals and pack them in advance. So that's very important, is you need to plan and pack your meals in advance. So that is one thing. And if you're traveling and things like that, you have to make use of what is best available to you. And it's like, imagine if you are been a vegetarian all your life, and when you're traveling and you see a lot of non-veg hotels, you won't go to those hotels. You will go and find out a vegetarian place. Similarly, when it comes to a vegan lifestyle, you just have to make sure whatever you're eating is something you enjoy eating, but it doesn't have your dairy, or if it's unavoidable, then you have less of it. For example, you're going to a place of tea and coffee and you really want to have tea and coffee, but they don't have an alternative or they cannot use without milk, then you have a little bit of it or you avoid it. So you try your best to see how you can avoid something and you see if it's really necessary for you or not.
Okay, yeah, thanks, thank you, Nitin.
Yes, ma'am. What food we eat for if we work out in the gym?
So, like I said, a plant-based diet has very less calories and it's high in nutrition. So, like I said, just incorporating the circle I said of having your protein, your fiber, and your carbohydrates, having that. So, post-workout, if it's towards evening, you would have your dinner, or if it's in the morning, you'll have your breakfast. So, you make sure the nutritional requirements are there. Having protein shakes and protein bars and all are fine, but it's important you have a balance. It's not only protein. Like I said, it has to have your fiber, it has to have your carbs and your protein. But there is no such thing as only a gym meal or a post gym workout meal or a pre gym workout meal. It depends on during the day. When you're after the gym, you'll be a little hungry, so then you'd have your lunch or you'll have your dinner. But it's important to not over snack because you burn a lot of calories, and when you eat you consume calories, and that's when you just have either your breakfast, lunch, or your dinner.
Question is, some people says that they have to drink water before meal, some says that they drink water in between the meal, and someone says that we have to drink water after the meal. Can you suggest what timing is good for drinking water at the time of meal?
So make sure you keep drinking water throughout the day. There is no such thing as having it before or after. You have to make sure that there is never a time in a day where you feel thirsty. Because when you start feeling thirsty, your body is partially dehydrated. You're already dehydrated and your body is asking for water. So you need to make sure that you're drinking water throughout the day. When you feel hungry, you will have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can drink water before or after a meal, but you have to drink water when you need to drink water. And you need to make sure you drink water not just because you're feeling thirsty, but because you know you have to keep sipping and drinking.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes.
yeah, what are the foods to increase hemoglobin?
Hemoglobin, well, it's your iron foods. So that when we talk about iron, we can talk about beetroot. Beetroot is very rich in iron. Then you can have your spinach, your kale, your leafy greens and vegetables. You can also result to your pulses, your dals and your lentils also have it. but I would recommend beetroot and spinach to be very good. You can make beetroot smoothies, beetroot soups, beetroot curries. That will also increase your hemoglobin.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I would like to say that if you do not take the plant-based nutrition, what type of deficiency cost or disease arise, or what is the scientific reasons that the disease will arise?
It is not more of deficiencies, it's more of disorders. And I had spoken about the disorders of cancer, diabetes, heart issues, obesity, menstrual issues. These issues arise a lot because of consuming meat, dairy, and eggs. So when you avoid consuming all of that, you have a plant-based diet. So it's not that if people eat a plant-based diet, they have deficiency. It's just that they will be in a safe zone. They will not be more prone to having such disorder. I think
that's it, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such a nice session. I just approached you, a couple of days
yeah.
before, and the session was really, really wonderful. And within a short period of time, you did your best. And hope the audience also liked your session. So the key takeaway points from the session was how to have a balanced diet, and how a plant-based nutrition or a plant-based diet will help us in keeping ourselves fit, so that we can avoid or try to manage diabetes or obesity, whatever people faces. And yes, during the session you did also share your book, which you have written, and hope it would be our one of our pleasures to read the book and figure out more in detail about the plant-based diet. Thank you all for being here with us for today's webinar, and stay connected with us.